Honourable Luchmun Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I wish to join my colleagues from this side of the House to congratulate the Honourable Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development for having presented such a promising and an ambitious budget to the nation, in spite of a global economic situation which some analysts have branded as uncharted waters. This budget translates the view of the government and the Honourable Prime Minister for a better and more prosperous Mauritius and for ensuring our economic recovery for sustained growth and development. Ce budget a aussi mis KO l'opposition dans son ensemble, qui prévoyait, elle, un budget d'austérité. Tel n'a pas été le cas, Monsieur le Président, n'en déplaise à certains. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a developing country, highly dependent on external sources, there are lessons for us to learn from the crisis unleashed by the international pandemic COVID-19. As we all know, no country, big or small, developed or developing, has been shielded from the impact of the pandemic. That's why, Mr. Speaker, sir, this budget is constructed on the philosophy of our new normal, the economy of life. Mr. Speaker, sir, this crisis is unique on its own and cannot in any manner be compared to the financial crisis of 2008-2009. The Minister of Finance deserves our respect for the initiatives he has taken to ease the life and quality of living of our population. In the same breath, he has also proved the doomsayers wrong. The more so as many of them were expecting this budget to be a difficult one, with measures that would otherwise have impacted on the population. But he has shown qu'il a plus d'un tout dans son sac, because this budget is being widely acclaimed in almost every segment of business and the population at large. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, sir, this budget presented to the nation on Thursday, 4th June 2020, is also a testimony that this government was not elected on false hopes, but a commitment to improve the plight of the people of this country. Through this budget, we have shown that we came here to work for the country and for the benefit of every cross-section of our population. Mr. Speaker, sir, notre nouvelle normalité, l'économie de la vie, our new normal, the economy of life, is meant to propel the development process of our country in such a manner that will bring a glimmer of hope in the aftermath of the global pandemic. The House may be aware of the speculations that were rife before the presentation of this budget. For example, it was stated in many quarters that there would be a price hike of basic necessities. The end-of-year bonus or the universal old age pension would be abolished, but nothing of that sort has happened. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a clear indication that government means business, and its philosophy is to strive for the good of the common man. The new normal that the world is advocating demands that it cannot be business as usual. And as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is a great fan of the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she recently stated, business as usual would have everyone retrenched in our old patterns. Now is the chance for us to come together rather than argue about who gets to hold the umbrella. Mr. Speaker, sir, a few months ago, no one in this August Assembly would have ever predicted that the whole world would be impacted by the global pandemic, which would wreak havoc in economies over the world. Countries had to shut their borders in order to contain a virus that was literally invading the whole world, affecting the bottom lines of businesses and the routine of people. That's why I said in the beginning, Mr. Speaker, sir, there are lessons for us to learn from the global pandemic. The new normal, Mr. Speaker, sir, calls imperatively for a new way of life, a new culture, and altogether a different way of looking at things around us. And this budget has laid the foundations for us as a society to move along a new path, a path of recovery of our economy and society. Of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, members on the other side of the House will find every opportunity to lash out at the government. That is their role in a democracy. However, we expect the opposition to act more responsibly and to move away from the underlying principle that the post-COVID era will be business as usual. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House would have noted that the new normal and economy of life that the Minister of Finance has advocated in his budget speech to the nation is built around 10 key pillars, ranging from the construction sector, agriculture, manufacturing, tourism to entrepreneurship and SMEs. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, by the blessings of God, I happen to represent a constituency that is fundamentally rural, although a big chunk of the constituents also come from urban areas. But essentially, my constituency is agriculture in nature and scope. I will therefore take the time of the House to focus on three main pillars encapsulated in the budget, namely agriculture, entrepreneurship, and SMEs, and gender. Mr. Speaker, sir, with your permission, I would like to begin with one sector which is very close to my heart, agriculture, which is for a very long period of time has been the backbone of the economy of our country. Indeed, it has been one of the key pillars of the socio-economic development of Mauritius since independence. We know that it has also remained one of the biggest employer providing jobs to thousands of our population living in rural areas. Although we have diversified away from agriculture into sophisticated sectors such as tourism, ICT, financial services, and so on, historically and emotionally, agriculture, in view of this multifunctionality, will continue to constitute the mainstay of our economy for many more years to come. Mr. Speaker, sir, my constituency, Port Louis North Long Mountain, comprises several regions, namely Notre-Dame, Montaillon, Kongoma, Crèvecoeur, Vallée des Prêtres, Les Maurianes, that are essentially agricultural. There are many people from these places who depend on agriculture for their livelihood and the livelihood of their families. Indeed, these regions comprise a large number of planters and vegetable growers. I feel deeply elated that this 2020-2021 budget has laid so much emphasis on the need to boost agricultural development et de redonner à l'agriculture ses lettres de noblesse en faisant de Maurice notre terre nourricière. Mr. Speaker, sir, even big countries such as Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand are sparing no effort to give an added dimension to the development of their agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, the memory of our citizens having had to face an artificial shortage of vegetable and other basic food supplies is still vivid. We are also not oblivious to the fact that many of our people have had to face a price hike of vegetable during the recent lockdown. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, food self-sufficiency is crucial for a net food importing country such as Mauritius. Food self-sufficiency also has direct implications for our country in order to enable us to respond in an effective manner to the dietary needs of our population, notwithstanding external factors such as financial crisis or health pandemics. Therefore, it is incumbent, Mr. Speaker, sir, upon us as a government to ensure a regular flow of food supplies and, more importantly, to strive for food self-sufficiency. This budget indeed encompasses a whole gamut of policy measures designed to strengthen and ensure food self-sufficiency. It is important, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we protect our citizens from the trauma of artificial food supplies, artificial shortage of food supplies, including such basic necessities like potatoes, onions, tomatoes, you name it. We have all witnessed it, Mr. Speaker, sir, and honestly, I'm not convinced that such a dim picture should be painted again. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, sir, we welcome the announcement made by the Minister of Finance in his budget speech for the inception of a comprehensive national agri-food development program, as well as the promotion of the farm to fork concept, with the object of ensuring food security and reducing our high dependence on import of food supplies, particularly in difficult times. This is yet another lesson to be drawn from the COVID-19 because the pandemic has created negative consequences for countries across the world, in particular countries with low levels of food self-sufficiency. Mr. Speaker, sir, food self-sufficiency are no longer an option. They are irreversible processes in our agricultural development strategy. Food self-sufficiency should lie at the very heart of our vision and mission as a government. Pas seulement le temps d'une pandémie, Monsieur le Président. Governments across the world have started to realize the importance of food self-sufficiency and the need of their population to have access to sufficient amount of healthy foods. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to continually motivate our people and enjoin the coming generations to go back to basics, meaning retourner à notre terre nourricière. Because agriculture will continue to be the linchpin and the accelerator of our socio-economic development policies and strategies. Mr. Speaker, sir, we must all join forces in ensuring a food system that is better suited to grapple and handle any global crisis, whether financial, economic, or health pandemics. We must encourage our industries to move towards the development of agriculture and food supplies so that in the years to come, we become more resilient to external shocks. In his budget speech, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Minister of Finance has laid emphasis on the need for us to bring more land under food cultivation. This is a very laudable initiative. Allow me here to open a parenthesis by recalling to the House around the year 2007, the Labour government had caused some 22 planters in the region of Richter to be evicted in order to make way for the Tianli project, which, as we all know, has turned out to be the biggest joke ever in the history of our country. And it is this government which has ensured that justice is done to those planters. Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget speech refers to some 20,000 acres of land that are currently abandoned, meaning are unutilized, and which can be converted for agricultural use. There are also private lands, Mr. Speaker, sir, which are unutilized and which can be put to better and more effective use in the context of the ongoing efforts of government to achieve food self-sufficiency. Mr. Speaker, sir, our local planters and food growers must be encouraged. They must be given the necessary technical and financial support in their effort to step up food production. In his speech, the Minister of Finance has also announced a series of measures to support planters and food growers. Such measures include, Mr. Speaker, sir, an increase in subsidy for the purchase of potato and onion seeds from 5,000 rupees to 25,000 rupees per ton. Similarly, the payment of the annual premium of crop loss compensation scheme will be waived. A grant of 50% will be provided to all orchard owners for the purchase of permanent netting structures. Distressed companies affected by the COVID-19 will be granted loans at the concessional rate of 0.5% per annum by the Development Bank of Mauritius, that is DBM. Mr. Speaker, sir, these are certainly very bold and ambitious measures which will go a long way in giving a new lease of life to our planters and food growers. It would be remiss on my part if I did not refer during my intervention to another policy measure announced by the Minister of Finance regarding sugarcane planters in Mauritius. We know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the sugar planters community has dwindled over the years. I know that at some point of time, there were like 35,000 planters in Mauritius. And now, I'm told that the number today is a dismal of 11,000 planters. This does not augur well for the future of small sugar planters. But then the question that we should ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, sir, is why the size of small sugarcane planters has plummeted. Why? Who is responsible for such a situation? We should revert this trend in the interest of agriculture and the interest of the planters community. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that for a very long time, the sugar planters community in Mauritius was left on its own, having had to face declining sugar prices as well as the absence of necessary support and facilities from the authorities concerned. And this budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, has addressed a problem that no other government has dared to do up to now. That is ensuring that our local planters are given a guaranteed price of 25,000 rupees per ton for the first 60 tons of sugar. Likewise, it is also provided in the budget that the insurance payable to the Sugar Industry Fund Board by planters who produce up to 60 tons of sugar will be waived during the 2020 crop season. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is provision for an increase of the rate of customs duty on imported sugar from 80% to 100%, which is yet another laudable fiscal policy measure to protect the local sugar planters in the context of National Agri-Food Development Programme. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me now come to the second dimension of my intervention. And here, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to dwell upon the subject of entrepreneurship and SMEs, which is the 10th pillar of the economic development, economy recovery plan for this government outlined in the 2021 budget speech by the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, sir, it cannot be denied that every crisis brings in its wake a number of challenges and threats. But at the same time, there are also opportunities that are generated and that can be captured for the benefit of humanity. Likewise, Mr. Speaker, sir, organizations are also impacted. And when I say organizations, I have in mind people such as employees and entrepreneurs. In other words, those who constitute the backbone of the business, the linchpin of the economy. It is only reasonable and legitimate that as a government, we continue to provide all the necessary support they deserve, especially during these testing times of their existence. Mr. Speaker, sir, we all know that businesses have been badly dented and their bottom line seriously impaired in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. And here I have in mind the small and medium enterprise, SMEs operating in the informal sectors. As a government, it is our duty, even our obligation, to give support to our SMEs in these difficult times because they constitute an important segment of our economy. They make significant contribution to the GDP of this country. They are also major job providers. It goes without saying that SMEs are increasingly becoming key players in shaping national economic development and ensuring sustainable growth. It is a known fact that governments over the world are sparing no effort to support SMEs in their vision to provide goods and services to the local community as well as for job creation. As rightly pointed out by the Minister of Finance in his speech, our economic recovery and future growth of Mauritius will depend on how we build a strong and inclusive economy and society. In this regard, it is highly commendable that the SMEs are at the forefront of the recovery agenda of this government. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me therefore congratulate the Minister of Finance for the financial support he is giving to the SMEs and cooperative societies through the DBM. For too long, SMEs have suffered from lack of finance and access to capital. I would like to believe that such a shortcoming, which was too prevalent in the past, has now been fully addressed by this government. In the same manner, Mr. Speaker, sir, we thank the Minister of Finance for his excellent initiative of providing financial assistance up to the ceiling of 10 million rupees per enterprise at a concessional rate of 0.5 per annum. My own constituency has many local entrepreneurs, and I am sure this will be a major boost that will enable them to expand their activities within the context of avowed policy of the government to promote the Made in Maurice label. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the achievement of the Made in Maurice label, the budget speech provides some excellent proposals, such as the increase of the margin of preference from 30% to 40% in all public procurement initiatives. Furthermore, all SMEs and cooperative societies will benefit from a grant of 15% on cost of asset under the DBM Enterprise Modernization Scheme. All these innovative measures will no doubt encourage our local entrepreneurs to take their business to the next level while bringing in value added in their quest to remain afloat in the aftermath of the global pandemic. Mr. Speaker, sir, in conclusion, and while being mindful of the time allocated to me, I also wish to say a few words on gender and family welfare. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the fore one stark reality that most impacted segment of society has been women. Studies carried out by well-known analysts confirm that women have been the hardest hit by COVID-19. Indeed, women are facing untold challenges and will continue to be affected at the hands of the virus, driving them deeper into the poverty trap. There are also reports that indicate that during lockdowns, the rate of domestic violence and abuse against women has increased drastically. The more so as women were less able to seek help and assistance as a reason of being confined at home. For example, in Germany, the emergency number for domestic violence registered a high of 18% more calls during the first 2 weeks of the lockdown. It has also been reported, Mr. Speaker, sir, that after the lockdown has been lifted in China, there has been a sharp rise in divorce in China. In our own context, there have been over 800 reported cases of violence against women during the confinement period. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is no doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the economic and financial vulnerability of women, meaning that women will continue to bear the financial fallout in the post-COVID era. That's why, Mr. Speaker, sir, the need to protect our women against all forms of discrimination, abuse and violence should continue to remain our major preoccupation. In this regard, as a woman, I welcome the initiative announced by the Minister of Finance to amend the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act in order to enhance the protection of women. It is also encouraging to know that there is provision for concessional loans to be granted to women as part of government strategy to promote women entrepreneurship. Mr. Speaker, sir, all these measures speak highly of the government's vision to foster and build an inclusive economy and society. This government will not renege on its pledge to build a better society for all Mauritians from all walks of life. This budget is not about the loss of jobs, rather it is about saving as many jobs as we can through the various policy measures announced by the Minister of Finance. It is about supporting the growth of our economy during the next 4.5 years. It shows the determination and compassion of this government, in particular the Prime Minister, to protect jobs and to improve the livelihoods of our people. This budget also encapsulates a clear vision and sets out a clear plan to restore economic stability in uncharted waters. This budget lays down the social and economic fundamentals to take Mauritius through the process of economic recovery and get the economy back on track and moving. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me quote the Prime Minister of New Zealand. She recently stated, I quote, "Let's begin our recovery and let's rebuild together. The new normal, the economy of life, has started. It's irreversible. We have chosen as a government to act. As a government, we will succeed. We will reverse the situation for the common good of our country and our people. We will bounce back. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.